The book is not what I hoped for, in that it does not pick up explicitly on Laudato Si. But as I have reflected further, I have understand that it does something even more important. To understand this judgment, I will have to take much of my time to describe our global situation as I see it. This may seem like a long detour, but I hope in the end it will prove helpful to you in making your own assessment. I must be brief. Please assume that I know that there are exceptions to all my generalizations. For half a century, I have viewed collective human behavior as leading toward global catastrophe. This includes, but is not limited to, global warming. What is happening to soil and to fresh water, even apart from temperature change, is leading toward the collapse of human civilization. American insistence on global domination is refused by enough of the people of the planet to threaten war between nuclear powers. The now inevitable salinization of the world's deltas will be one factor in forcing hundreds of millions of people to find new homes in a world that does not welcome strangers. The immiseration of billions of people in extreme poverty while a few thousand live in extreme luxury is likely to lead to violent eruptions on a massive scale. Clearly, our course is not sustainable. Indeed, it does not deserve to be sustained. But it is pursued relentlessly by those in power. Currently, we are in a global transformation. Those who care about the fate of the life on the planet are hopeful that at last humanity is waking up and protesting the war against life. But this hunger for transformation into new life in healing and creative communities needs effective global leadership. Hundreds of people have good ideas about improvements, but no proposals for saving change have generated significant movements. Meanwhile, those who have been in control are using the pandemic, the racial unrest, the political chaos, and the economic crisis to tighten their control, to control wealth still more, to concentrate wealth still more in their own hands, and to plan to advance their interests in the future. They know what they want, and they can use the control they already have to get it. The concentration of wealth and power in a few hands has required the victory of economism. Believers in economism suppose that the masses of people have two important functions. They are needed and they are needed to consume goods and services. Humans are valued for these two roles, and the value is monetary. We are commodified. The commodification of the natural world is already almost complete. The plan for the future is to commodify us as well. This will happen unless the masses of people who want a good life for themselves and their children can join forces to create a different future. But this requires a shared vision and great leadership. Where are these to be found? You may ask, are not there great universities where scholars in many fields who are working to develop a plan for a joyful future? The answer is no. At least in the United States, our entire schooling system is in the service of wealth. It teaches that money is the only value and that the increase of money is achieved by universal selfishness. Products of this system who are paid to advance it are not a promising source for the wisdom we need. But we have large and influential non-governmental organizations dedicated to all sorts of good causes. Cannot they envisage a livable future and tell us how to get there? Again, the answer is no. The great majority of the large NGOs have become large by getting money from large foundations and wealthy people. To do this, they have to specify what they aim to do. None of them aim to create a vision of the future, radically opposed to the well-developed one of the establishment. To oppose the establishment would be to betray one's benefactors and to lose the income with which they are saving endangered species, helping the poor, overcoming diseases, planting trees, defending human rights, and doing many other excellent things. But with regard to what we need most, we cannot look to them. Somewhat more promising are spiritual communities. Most of them do not depend on grants from the rich. Religious freedom, at least in some countries, is widely accepted. In all their diversity, they have called for human responsibility to standards other than economistic ones. Indeed, in the United States, those who want homogeneous economistic thinking throughout society have gone to some trouble to silence the voice of traditional and progressive Christians. They have arranged for takeovers of the Southern Baptist Convention and the Missouri Synod Lutherans. They have persuaded many that conservative theology supports economism and thereby created the religious right and the Tea Party. They have weakened the mainstream Protestant denominations by stirring up opposition to the leadership among conservative members. Despite all of this, at the national level, and even more at the global level, some denominations have made excellent statements relevant to what is needed. I have great appreciation for the work of the World Council of Churches, made up of traditional Protestant denominations and Orthodox churches. However, there are severe limitations. The WCC does not have the resources to work out an alternate system. Also, that system would have to reject much that is taught by experts in universities. Liberal church people want to be open to those who know the most. They prefer to make general statements about values and goals rather than oppose what is now taught. In any case, the vast majority of people at the local level are hardly aware that such statements exist. Local church leaders know that discussions of political and economic topics is controversial and seek harmony within their congregations. They are also influenced by the special need to have the support of the more affluent members. We could then look to other traditions for unifying leadership. However, my judgment is that there is not much promise there. Jews and Hindus and Confucianists have much to offer, but they are tied too closely to their ethnicities to play the role we identify. Buddhism is the most trans-ethnic of these traditions, and the Dalai Lama is a great global spiritual leader. But in the total scene, Tibetan Buddhism is one of the smaller branches of Buddhism, and its teachings about historical matters have not been well developed. It has been my impression that in multi-faith meetings of religious leaders, the tendency is for all to look to the Pope for leadership. I judge that the Roman Catholic Church, with all its problems, is the most promising place to look for global leadership. It has recognition from governments at all levels. It has unified leadership, unlike the organizations that meet occasionally, such as the World Council of Churches. It has a large ongoing bureaucracy. It can call on authorities in many fields to assist in the formulation of goals and visions. Until recently, it was seriously inhibited by the fact that its most powerful branch was a bank that was fully part of the global banking system. The only pope who had seriously opposed it was assassinated. A church that realistically feared the Vatican Bank could not give the leadership the world so urgently needed. Pope Francis dealt skillfully with this problem. He succeeded in defanging the bank. The Vatican is now free to do what it wants, and the most powerful figure in the Vatican is the Pope. This does not mean the Pope is not hemmed in by many institutional requirements. But the Pope who fought the bank and survived is a skillful politician. He can say what he believes in an encyclical, and he can address it to whomever he wants. Soon after he became Pope, he gathered real experts to work with him on a statement that accurately describes the urgent need for radical change. Laudato Si affirms that the change has the highest priority and that all our institutions should direct their efforts toward responding to the danger. It gives a clear indication of what this involves. He calls his new vision integral ecology. Not only is the direction of the needed world order excellent depiction of them, but the way this is presented to the world is brilliant. The Pope understands that competition among the world's spiritual traditions is the opposite of what is needed. He wants to offer himself as representative of all people of goodwill, expressing the conscience of the world. This does not mean that he seeks to limit himself to what is already universally affirmed, but it does mean that he wants to speak to and for all people of goodwill, and to share leadership with those in similar positions in other communities. At the same time, he wants his fellow Catholics to recognize what he says builds on their tradition. He presents himself as deeply immersed in and in continuity with the wisdom of the Catholic tradition. He invites Buddhists and Muslims and atheistic humanists and everyone else to study their traditions and find their support for saving the world from utter destruction. When confronted with the universal human problem, we need a leader who speaks for all. I was one of those who were convinced that our prayers were answered. We had the leader we needed. I was eager to become a follower, expecting that to mean to join a movement. Sadly, we have to admit that despite all the gains, there has been no movement. I thought there might at least be work on particular features of Laudato Si. Perhaps there might be a proposal for an alternative economy. Perhaps we might learn that Catholic universities were breaking away from the dominance of value-free research disciplines over good teaching. When I learned that there was a new encyclical, my hopes revived. But when I read it, I was disappointed. I hoped for advance toward new economic theory. I got another clear indication that the way we now think about and practice economics is unacceptable. But we were not much farther along in articulating an alternative. I felt affirmed in my own efforts to work out an economics for community, based on the understanding that humans must have community, that the individualism underlying the present theory and practice are destroying communities all over the world, and that economics, theoretically and practically, should be directed toward strengthening community. I'm grateful for Pope Francis' tacit support, but I want guidance. Fratelli Tutti does not build on Laudato Si in that way. Instead, it counters the commodification of human beings. People are not to be valued economistically. All human beings have dignity and should be treated accordingly. One may strongly disagree with others, but this calls for respect and efforts to understand. This is a message badly needed in the United States. Those who control the media have gone to great lengths to generate mutual contempt between those who view the life of the fetus as sacred and those who absolutize the rights of the woman over her own body. If instead of mutual recrimination, people on both sides listened to the other, they would find much common ground. They could work together to reduce unwanted pregnancies. They could also reduce the need for abortions by making sure that a woman would be helped financially and otherwise with her new baby. This would not resolve all the issues, but those who pushed for one position would realize that those who oppose them are conscientious human beings who have good reasons for that position. If we all follow Francis, we can all live together, and we could unite in opposing the commodification of either the fetus or the woman, and also of those who differ about abortion. Francis is fully explicit that among the world's spiritual communities, efforts at converting one another are not appropriate. Ending the practice is a prerequisite for full cooperation among the communities that affirm the dignity of all people. Rather than reducing the importance of rootage in one community or another, this calls for deeper rootage. If one is deeply rooted, one can appreciate others and learn from them without anxiety. Learning from one another is enriching rather than threatening. That also means we can offer one another great gifts. In this encyclical, Francis offers to people of all traditions Jesus' parable of the Good Samaritan. He draws from it extensively, but that does not mean that what he, as a Christian, learns from that parable is a private possession of Christians. To learn from Jesus' parables does not require assenting to any creed or joining a church. Jesus belongs to the world, not to the church. Of course, as Christians invite others to be enriched by appreciation of Jesus, they also ask to be enriched by the gifts of others. Those who appreciate the spiritual dimension of life are the last bulwark of defense against the commodification that the establishment plans for us. If our response is fragmented, the bulwark will be easily breached. If Protestants like me and atheistic humanists join Jews, Hindus, and Confucianists in saying no to commodification, there is still a chance that we can turn the tide. I advocate following Francis. What would happen if we all took advantage of a unique set of favorable circumstances and followed Pope Francis? What would happen is that the world might be saved. Thank you.